call our meeting to order.
Director Gallagher?
Here.
Julie Peterson? Here. Jessica Dixon? Here. Mike Russell?
Here.
And Chair Vanessa?
Here. The changes to our agenda, we have 2 items today. On consent, we have our minutes for March 24th, and our discussion is the March financial performance. No changes to the agenda. We'll open this up to public comment. The opportunity for members of the public to do something that is not on today's agenda. Anybody in person? Do you have anybody online that move on to comments from committee members. Opportunity for committee members to share insights or perspectives or anything that might be happening often in other meetings. Talk about related community meetings we might be at. Any public comments? Committee members.
I have a question. I'm not sure this is. I see the $975,000 insurance payment. Do you have a sense of, even if it's a rough estimate, what the whole thing costs? Not the insurance, but the whole incident.
You're talking, because I'm assuming you're talking about what was paid to all the vendors that was paid directly by the insurance company. That's what you mean. You know, because there was payments to Heroic, you know, security, and to the forensic accountants, the legal. Yeah, that wasn't run.
That didn't go through here. I'm happy to defer this till later, but the question really is, what did it cost us personally, not cost the insurance company?
Well, we recovered our costs. We tracked the expenses. What the $975,000 is the expenses we incurred to kind of recover, such as the kind that was put in to put all the accounts in, bill them, and all the follow up for the next couple months after the attack, plus the revenue recovery. So what was calculated as lost revenue when we were down and had to cancel procedures and things like that. So the $975 covers both of those.
That makes me happy. Thank you.
Have a we have any for
$250 or just a flash.
Yeah. Insurance line.
So, is there any other comments from committee members before we move into our agenda? I do have one comment and just a reflection of committee member Gallagher and I also serve as ad hoc members to Board's Care Committee, which is about sustainable actions for the hospital. And for any members of the public who might be watching or awareness here, where the board is getting an update on that tomorrow night. Some of the activities, including outreach to stakeholders, federal, state, and local, and county. So that'll be an update to the board tomorrow night. Is that any other comments? Seeing none, we can move into our consent. On consent, we have one item for minutes from March 24th, 2026. Going to take action. Where we accept. Thank you, Mike.
I'll take roll on this item. Director Gallagher?
Yes.
Julie Peterson? Yes. Jessica Dixon? Mike Russell?
Yes.
And Chair Vanessa?
Yes. Next on our agenda is accept and file of our financial performance for March 2026. Please.
I'll take you through it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll start with a month-to-date look. We had a very strong month in March. Certainly the cyber insurance payment helped our March results. You can see we had a positive EBITDA of $909,000 and a net income of $857,000. We did have good volumes in March. I'll go through those in a minute. And so you'll also see, when you look at it from an adjusted to volume basis, that we really did pretty well on our expenses. Slightly on the fixed, looking at just straight actual, the budget, you know, for about $300,000 unfavorable on labor and more unfavorable, $200,000 unfavorable on supplies. But when you actually see how much our volume exceeded budget, you'll see in the adjusted look that we actually were very well in managing been doing a little bit of cleanup, as we do every month, that also have prior month corrections that sometimes hit in a subsequent month. Sometimes they're favorable, sometimes they're unfavorable. And we kind of just try to watch those to understand how they might have impacted the individual months. And we still do not have QAF 9 approval. Next slide. So from a year-to-date basis, especially with a strong March, we're sitting pretty nice at almost $950,000 of net income and a little over $1 million in favorable EBITDA. Probably the strongest thing, and I'll be saying this every month for a while, I hope, or maybe even something better. I like to see how close the net revenue is to budget, because that was really our challenge last year, every month. And so you can see that we're really seeing volumes that are much closer to what we had budgeted. This was a month where we saw higher inpatient volume, and so higher inpatient volume helps us from the kind of efficiency standpoint. And so we saw some of that. And you'll also, see where there's more volume to spread the fixed costs over. And we've had a very strong focus on the supply management, both from making sure we have enough supplies in-house, but also as one of our largest expenses.
Sorry.
Good.
We should get that.
Wait to hear if it is a drill or not.
Oh, boy. Next slide? Yeah. Okay, here's a quick look at the statistics. 26 more admissions than we had budgeted. Did have a little bit longer length of stay this month at almost almost 3.8. So that's accounts for the higher patient days and the higher average daily census. So you can see our average daily census almost hit 32. That was about five patients per day higher than what we had budgeted. Deliveries just slightly under budget, and total surgeries exceeded budget, mostly on the outpatient side. And the ER volume that we had seen a little bit soft in the earlier months rebounded this month. We were sitting at about 96 patients per day. The non-ER outpatient volume continues to be down. It did improve this month since we had the MRI in place, and I think some of the reduction, we do have some softer volumes in the imaging as well as in rehab, and some of that is also because we've reduced hours to be more efficient and to align with what we feel that the need is at this time. Next slide. So year to date, the statistics are all looking pretty strong, 74 admissions, and really pretty close on the length of stay. Surprisingly, this year deliveries are running behind budget, where last year most of the time they were running at or above budget. And then the surgeries are pretty much on budget, and the ER visits are above budget. All right, okay. So wanted to just take a moment and talk a little bit about what's different. We kind of touch on it here, but I just wanted to call it out again. Generally, definitely running closer to budget on our volumes, so we're not seeing just a large gap from not meeting what we had projected as our volume. That's also helped us with all the volume-driven expenses. The net revenue is up about $5 million. $975,000 of that is the cyber attack, and the rest comes in the form of, collections, payer mix, service mix. I looked at the collections as a percent of our revenue on the accounts that had already gone to zero. So this means that our billing agency has collected what they are going to collect, and And we may send it out for somebody else to take a look and see if there was anything left behind, but for the most part, these accounts on our books are at zero balance. And so we have seen some improvements there. We've been, working hard on the revenue cycle for a few years now and really focused on, making sure we're collecting what is owed to us on those accounts. And just doing the math over this period of time, that had about $1.2 million impact. We now have a higher average collection on each account. It's kind of hard to explain it because every payer has a different collection percentage, but when you average it out and look at it, it was about a $1.2 million improvement. Our expenses are down, and where we're seeing that is in contract labor. We've really reduced our contract labor because of our cash constraints. Our pro fees, they're higher, but they're within the budget because we actually budgeted for the higher pro fees. And if you think about the first quarter of last year, we were in some transition with hospitalist groups, with radiology groups, and so we have seen some stabilization and improvements on the pro fees. Interestingly, with these improvements, if you look at volumes year over year, they are generally lower than they were. It's a little bit, March was a month here where, the inpatient volume picked up, but just looking at it kind of quarter over quarter is what I mean by this comment. But we are seeing that it's a little bit more proportionally inpatient versus outpatient. And that, as I mentioned before, it helps with efficiency, but it also helps with reimbursement as the inpatient reimburses higher than the outpatient rate. And on the inpatient side, you will see that our payer mix has slightly declined. It's not quite as strong as it was in the first quarter of last year. So it's kind of a good news, bad news thing. Definitely the good news is that we're performing within our budget. We're performing better than our budget. And as we all know, we still have struggles with cash. So here was more of a volume-adjusted look just to see that we're within 5% of budget on the net operating revenue, so just down slightly, and I really attribute most of that to the decline, a little bit of decline in payer mix and some of those softer outpatient services in the first quarter. We're favorable in all of the expense categories, and mostly favorable. The larger favorability is in the fixed cost areas, the things that aren't so dependent on the volume. But even the volume-related categories such as labor and supplies, we were in all those areas we are operating within the budget that we planned. Here's the inpatient volume. So acute admissions were down a little bit this month, but February we had been growing month over month for about 4 months, and then slightly down, but still exceeded our budget, and a little bit higher length of stay this month. Oh, mine is dying. Okay. On the deliveries, really kind of the normal up a month, down a month, up a month. Certainly, we saw a lot of high volume last year, and you can really see that in the first half of the slide. Up through about August, the volumes were stronger. And since September, they've really just been kind of bouncing back and forth, between high 50s to high 60s. What was probably most noticeable this month was that our NICU volume was down, and we only had 4 admissions in the. On the ER visits, the 96 per day, the last 4 months, you can see that the trend had been building up and dropped off. The blue lines are sometimes I even read my own slide backwards. The blue line is the actual visits per day, and then the orange bars are the inpatient conversion rate. And I think we talked last month that the last couple months we had seen an increase in our conversions to inpatient. It really dropped back down this month more to what we were seeing most of last year in the 6.5% range. Slide. On the non-ER, we really have had the softer volume since the MRI was out of service at the end of September, and starting to see it rebound a little bit. Certainly had MRI volume in March that helped it, but overall still softer than what we were seeing before. As I mentioned before, we've been reducing hours in some places where the volume isn't there, and we need to be as efficient as we can, while we're also doing work to make sure that physician offices and patients know about the services that we offer through the hospital and Coastal Healthcare Partners, so that we try to bring some of that volume back. It came back in the middle of February. Next slide. So inpatient surgical cases, we did 45 inpatient surgeries, and so all but 3 of them were in our top 3 areas of GI, OBGYN, and general surgery. Things unusual there. Next slide. On the outpatient side, we did 125 total outpatient surgeries. 107 of them make up the top 5, and 42% of them are in the general surgery category. It was a pretty strong month also for the robot-assisted cases with 24. From a payer mix, I think I mentioned before, it was not our strongest payer mix, especially on the inpatient side. Commercial was down to 12%, and when you went back and looked kind of on a patient day basis, only 8% of our patient days were commercial patients, so very heavily government weighted this month. That does have an impact on the reimbursement rates. Outpatient, it does remain pretty consistent. Since there wasn't much storyline to tell here, I did just take a look at what the ED-only patient mix is, because this is kind of a combination of ED and other outpatient services. And when you look at just the ED, which is typical and which I would expect, but you see a higher self-pay. Almost 5% of our ED mix was self-pay, and about 51% was in the managed Medi-Cal. So these are definitely things that we are keeping an eye on and will be monitoring as we try to understand the impacts and watch what the impacts of HR 1 are to us. And my final slide was, this question has come up a few times, and I don't know if the slide, I'll try to explain it, but the real question is, okay, great, you're doing well this year, things are good, and yet you're still talking about cash being a challenge. And so what this is kind of trying to describe is the difference between what the income statement says and what the bank account says. And really, when we book our QAF payments, and our DISH payments, but I'm going to focus primarily on QAF here. We book based on what the approved programs are and what is expected to be collected and spent on that program in the calendar year. And then we, as you can see by the straight blue line, it's basically spread over the 12 months. So what I'm graphing here is the net of payments and receipts. And if everything's played out that way with, even though it won't necessarily play out in a straight line, but just that we received all the cash that we were supposed to in the given year, and we paid all the cash we were supposed to in the given year, we would net about $16 million from the QAF 8. But as we know, we've had to take advances against QAF 8, and those started last year. So we took a number of advances against QAF 8, and QAF 8 finishes up this year, but we have pretty much already advanced that. The advance that's in the February, so that orange bar in February, was an advance against QAF 8, which was money that was really going to come to us in October, but we needed to call for it early. At the same time, as we've been able to advance the cash that was eventually going to come to us as receipts, we've also negotiated payment plans with the state on how to pay our portion. And originally, some of our payments were going to come due at the end of April. We would have just started paying those. And given our cash constraints, I've actually renegotiated that with the state not to even start to pay for those until November. So that's the two larger orange bars. Some of the other smaller orange bars are just minor payments that we haven't necessarily deferred. But so as the cash spreads, the annual net cash that we're going to see this year, which we've already received, is about $2.5 million. So you have, there's your $14 million shortfall between what the income statement might indicate, looks like we're going to receive from QAF 8, and what's actually going to happen this year. That was my last slide, but I just wanted to address that question because I'm sure it's one that comes up for people.
Before we move to the questions.
That concludes my presentation.
Question or comment? As I've sat in a quarterly meeting, Angela seems really interested in our overall cash position, but how well we match budget as a way of knowing how our business works. Like it's a good standard. This time.
It is, and we have a covenant in those particular, with that particular line of credit, based on a rolling 2-quarter and a rolling 4-quarter budget versus actual. So the last 2 quarters, we've actually not met that covenant, and the bank has provided forbearance, and guarantors have agreed to that. This quarter is good, so we will have met it, but our 4th quarter of last year, we will have missed it. So in a rolling, we'll still be off, but it's definitely a step in the right direction.
Imaging earlier, talking about CT status.
It's most likely June-ish, but it's really dependent upon the state approval process. It actually arrived this one. So the installation process takes a little bit, and then they got to build all the cabinetry and other things around it, and then the inspection process. So, moving forward, MRI is going to be a couple to a few weeks behind it.
Land, how revenue opportunities, how do
consumer delivery. That's the first one that we'll be actually bringing those out to physician offices around the community, let them know what our new services are, when they're coming online, how to get more information, and how to refer patients.
Question that may maybe piggyback on that, you know, we saw a lot of, when we were going up the budget slides, maybe some small statistically irrelevant deviations from budget to actual, both positive and favorable. The one that kind of stood out to me was deliveries as being kind of the outlier. And I guess my question is, do we have a sense of what the contributing factors are for that? Are there less deliveries in the market? Are we feeling a period of time where it's just kind of cyclical in nature? Is there, are these patients going elsewhere? Sounds like there's been some work received from targeting that particular service line as referral guides have been developed, but it's more of like a look-ahead question than it is like what's happening in a particular month or even a year-to-date standpoint in Q1. I don't know if anyone has any insights.
Yeah, tough to really say with the first 3 months of this year, but we do know that in 2025, we had about 35% of the county deliveries, and that's, and there's 3 hospitals that deliver, and so that's right around, we've been number 1 by a little bit, and so that tracks still for 2025.
Okay, so it seems like within the market, it's just lower births altogether.
That's been true, that's been a 10-15 years.
Which I guess is a good indication of if you're looking for an explanation, that's a better one than they're going elsewhere. Might be something.
I know that more people know.
It doesn't sound like it.
The 10 or 15-year thing is we used to deliver 120. And the state,
Right.
And so did Sutter, and so did Dominican.
Yeah.
But then Sutter opened the maternity surgery center, a whole bunch of there, they deliver fewer babies. I don't think it's a larger percentage. And then I think the other statistic thing I know is that there's a disaster where people are at home a lot. 9 months later, you get a big.
That was kind of a cyclical question. Yeah, get all the early fall baby. And then it's more of just, you know, I don't know what the average run rate is though, but I think you mentioned there was 8% of our patient days for the month of March were commercial, and that being lower. I don't know what the average is, but what that does kind of set my, you know, spidey senses off of is looking ahead into this month and probably next month, lower at overall cash realization for your inpatient, because now you have a payer mix shift here. So it's just more of something that probably getting an earlier explanation for, or insight into an explanation that we'll be asking.
Getting back to sort of good observation about OB, there are questions in OB is that only to our benefit that we spend on OB. I mean, there's some inherent costs that are unavoidable, but we're able to flex OB. How much flex do we have in OB?
So there are some very clear minimum staffing, core staffing requirements. Got to be ready for expected month. So you've got a core staffing you don't always have on hand. It's part of the reason why labor is a little challenging, especially across the state and across. You have to have that, and in order for that to never be an issue, you have to have like thousands of where core staffing never comes into play financially. We're always well above that.
And it has fairly, like, conservative reimbursement associated with it too, whereas, you know, it's similar, well, you have to have that core staffing as like, you know, a trauma center. But the reimbursement on that is on the other side of the spectrum compared to OB, so you can have very low volume and it still work for you financially, whereas OB is just not that case. And that is absolutely right with like the industry as a whole across the country. OB is a challenging space unless you have efficient structure and then tons of volume.
We think about, auditing the legislature in terms of right now, reimbursement. It seems to me like it would be worth our focus. Some years ago, there was much grumbling among various docs who did OB, and it sounded like at some point, doctors across the state walked, and the state paid an increased OB reimbursement for the physicians anyway. I don't know what happened for them, so.
Yeah, supporting women's health financially from the government.
This is a segue. The MRA cap lab, is there any from revenue generation?
From a physician standpoint right now, we're just really on pause to make sure that we have the right physician partnership, which at the moment is not there. We do have a physician group that is talking about adding some additional providers here in the area, but that hasn't materialized to the point where we have a robust volume structure yet. So not spending any money on that purchase right now while there's
A little bit of OP space on problem you with any that transfers or fluctuation.
There was no reason in the past month that we couldn't serve particular NICU patients. At 7 in April, so that's a bit lower than a low month, but nothing structurally that we did that.
Well, it's about 15 million in AP, and then there'll be things that haven't hit AP yet, but that have been, that we're accruing for.
Be helpful to get a almost like a slide in the AP by itself. I can speak to the types of vendors that the way to classify vendors by type makes sense. To help our board better understand the nature of the risk in AP. I think it's more in a brainstorming stage. I think there's more of a story that publicly while still balancing.
Yeah, I mean, we collect data not only on, you know, aging buckets, which we've talked about before, and I can tell you, you know, 85% of our AP is older than 30 days. And we do categorize things such as supplies or physician payments or benefits payments. It varies from week to week depending on what we have allowed ourselves as a budget for that week and what we've had to pay. Especially on the weeks when we make our large healthcare benefit, employee healthcare benefit one. I mean, the largest areas of AP right now, some of the largest vendors, I should say, our billing vendor is the highest outstanding balance. Some of our agencies that we've used for staffing, one of the reasons we've had to reduce staffing is we could not afford ongoing agency costs, and we've done a lot of work to fill the slots with permanent FTEs as much as possible, and sometimes it's just managing, you know, people that resign or terminate. Supplies, we have, you know, pages full of supply vendors, so some of those are fairly high, some of them are smaller dollars, but there's so many of them. And then the professional fees, we have a lot of physician, expenses that we struggle to be able to always keep up with those. And then we also, I'd say the other one is what we call our, besides things like insurance, but our critical systems. So keeping MedHost up, keeping ADP for payroll running, the data security and data center vendor paid. So it's, we've done a lot of work trying to prioritize, like for all of our weekly AP calls, how do we prioritize that? And it becomes hard because there's the squeaky wheel aspect of it, and then there's this vendor's not going to deliver supplies if we don't make a payment. They're just going to hold back on supplies, which means they're going to cancel services or have to transfer patients. And then, we have vendors that just say, well, you'll make us some sort of payment, we'll put you on credit hold, we will put you on support hold. So we have a lot of payment plans and a lot of phone calls and emails. Try to keep everybody believing that they're going to get paid and give us some patience and leniency.
Break down those categories. I'll let staff speak about it.
Yeah, I'll let my APT do that, yeah.
These might be comments, questions in our round of misunderstanding of phone record expenses and other requests in financials. Something we can address tomorrow. An example is when we get a bill for an invoice to an expense, and it goes to our key, we're so expensing it in the month, it just balance of in our financials. And I think there's a misunderstanding. People acting on cash flow, being if we don't pay it, it's not an expense. Our financials, we're expensing.
We're accruing for every known
Yeah.
expense during the month.
That tomorrow, I think there's a lot of questions. This is all understand. Counting down. I think we're not making the payment, it's right, recommending setting our financials. Of course, we are going to get paid. Conversation.
I think I'd probably then point people back to our audit, and
Yes.
We've been audited, and that is one thing that the auditors clearly check for, and
Absolutely.
that we have recorded expenses properly.
And just recapping the big picture, positive net results on the whole, driven by $975,000 payment. Payments we just would be close to break even. It feels like January, February, March has been more normalized than what we saw in 2025 as a whole. Education is also a measure of certification.
Yeah, and probably also, we didn't start the year just coming off of a cyber attack where we were still trying to recover.
Yep.
Because we were, in recovery mode for the first quarter of last year.
What was our last item today? Senior moment of taking action on this. I think we're adjourned. Thank you.
Very good.
That's where Martha says,